her chest. The sound of heavy machinery echoed through the station walls and bright lights shone down on the polished floors. Hundreds of delegates from different star systems walked past her, their voices overlapping like waves crashing against each other. For most, this was an ordinary day of politics. For Lysera, it was the most frightening day of her life. She was a diplomat of the Aelari, a species known for their soft features, translucent skin, and graceful movements. The Aelari lived on waterworlds where the seas stretched endless and calm. They were peaceful by nature, avoiding conflict and aggression whenever possible. To the Aelari, violence was something barbaric, something only savage species embraced, and no species carried that reputation more than the humans. Her elders had warned her, "Beware the humans, Lysera. They fight with fire in their hearts. They are dangerous. They smile with one hand and strike with the other." As the youngest diplomat her people had ever sent to a galactic summit, Lysera had studied every possible negotiation tactic, every detail of interstellar law, every known language spoken in the council chambers. But none of that eased the weight pressing down on her chest when she heard she would be assigned a human escort. A human. She had imagined what they might look like. Giant, brutal creatures with scars covering their bodies, eyes that burned like weapons, and voices that shook the air. She had tried to calm herself with logic. This is diplomacy, not war. They would not send a wild beast to a summit. Still, her fear only grew. Her translator device beeped softly, drawing her out of her thoughts. "Diplomat Lysera," it announced. "Your assigned escort has arrived. Please prepare for introduction." Her hands trembled. She turned slowly. At the far end of the docking bay stood a tall figure in a dark uniform. He was broad-shouldered, with a presence that seemed to pull every glance toward him. His face was sharp, marked by a faint scar that crossed his left cheek, a reminder of battles she could not imagine. His eyes, clear, piercing gray, met hers across the distance. For a moment, Lysera's heart stopped. Savage. The word thundered in her mind. This is what they warned me about. The man walked toward her with measured steps, boots clicking against the floor. He did not rush, nor did he glare, but every motion carried a weight that felt heavy to her. By the time he reached her, Lysera's legs were shaking so badly she thought she might collapse. He stopped at a respectful distance and gave a slight bow of his head. His voice when it came was deep but calm. "Captain Marcus Hale, assigned to your protection and assistance, Diplomat Lysera." Lysera blinked. The translator device whispered the words in her ear, but she barely needed it. His tone was strangely gentle, not the roaring thunder she had feared. Still, she struggled to speak. Her throat tightened, and when she finally managed words, they slipped out in a whisper. I thank you, Captain." Marcus studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "This station can be overwhelming. I'll see you safely through it." His words were simple, but Lysera's mind swirled. Why was his voice calm? Why did he not sneer or bark commands? She had expected danger in every movement, yet here stood a soldier who bowed before her with courtesy. Still, her instincts screamed. She lowered her eyes and kept her hands pressed tightly together, as if shielding herself. The walk through the station was long. Delegates of many species moved through wide halls decorated with banners and glowing panels. Lysera kept her eyes forward, trying not to notice how much taller Marcus was beside her. His strides were longer, his posture straighter. She felt like a fragile fish swimming beside a great predator. Every so often, she stole quick glances at him. His uniform was simple but neat, his boots polished, his movements controlled. The scar on his cheek caught her attention each time. It was not grotesque, but it spoke of violence, of battles fought and survived. To Lysera, it was proof of everything the stories had said, and yet, when a crowd of taller reptilian delegates brushed roughly past her, nearly knocking her over, it was Marcus who caught her arm gently and steadied her. "Careful," he said softly. "Some of them don't watch where they're going." Lysera froze at his touch, her skin prickling with shock. She pulled away quickly, lowering her eyes again. I'm fine," but inside her thoughts battled each other. He touched me, but it was not cruel. He steadied me, not harmed me. Why? At the council chamber entrance, Marcus guided her through the security gates. His presence seemed to part the crowd. Other soldiers and delegates moved aside without protest. Lysera felt like she was walking in a shadow that belonged to him. She did not know if that shadow was safe or dangerous. Inside, the chamber glittered with light. Holographic banners of countless empires floated above the long tables. Delegates argued in sharp voices, their translators buzzing to keep up. Lizera felt her throat tighten again. This was the place where she was meant to speak. Yet she could barely form words in the presence of her escort. Marcus leaned slightly toward her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Take a breath. You don't have to rush. Watch first, speak when you're ready. The advice surprised her. Was this not the same human who could fight with weapons and fire? Why would he tell her to breathe? Why would he sound almost patient? Lizera sat at her assigned seat, still trembling, while Marcus remained standing behind her chair, as silent as a mountain. His eyes scanned the chamber, alert, watchful, protective. She tried to focus on the speeches, but her thoughts wandered. He is savage, yes, but different from what I imagined. Strong but calm, scarred but gentle in words. How can both be true? Hours passed. The first day of the summit was filled with speeches, proposals, and disputes. Lizera barely spoke, only bowing her head when addressed. Each time she faltered, she felt Marcus's steady presence behind her. He never spoke out of turn, never interrupted, yet somehow his silence felt like support. When the chamber finally dismissed, Lizera rose quickly, eager to escape. But as she stepped into the hallway, her legs wobbled. The long day, the heavy fear, the endless lights, it was too much. She stumbled. Marcus caught her again, one hand steadying her shoulder. Easy, he murmured. You've done well for a first day. Lizera's eyes widened. His hand was firm but not painful, his words kind. Slowly, she nodded. Thank you. Captain. He released her gently and gave a small smile, barely there but real. Rest now. Tomorrow will be easier. For the first time that day, Lizera felt a spark of something strange inside her chest. It was not fear. Not exactly. It was something warmer, softer, though she could not name it. As she returned to her quarters, her mind replayed the scar, the eyes, the calm voice. She was still frightened, but the fear no longer felt so simple. That night, as Lizera sat by the window of her quarters watching the stars drift beyond the station, she whispered to herself, Savage human, why do I not hate you? The stars did not answer, but deep inside she knew this was only the beginning. The second day of the summit began with a soft chime in Lizera's quarters. She awoke slowly, her body heavy with tiredness, her mind clouded with yesterday's memories. She had faced the council chamber, but she had not spoken much. She had met the human soldier, Captain Marcus Hale, and he had unsettled her more than anything else. Her people had told her to fear humans, and yes, when she first saw him, her heart had frozen. His scarred face, his tall frame, his piercing eyes, they all fit the image of the savage that Ilari legend spoke of. Yet his actions had been different. He had bowed, spoken gently, and caught her when she stumbled. How can both truths exist at once? She wondered. Savage and kind, dangerous and calm. She dressed in her flowing diplomat robes, colors of ocean blue and pearl white, symbols of her people's watery world. As she adjusted the small translator device at her neck, her hands trembled slightly. She told herself it was nerves about the summit, but deep inside she knew part of it was because she would see him again. When the door to her quarters slid open, Marcus stood waiting outside, exactly on time. His uniform was as neat as the day before, his boots shining, his posture straight. His scar caught the hallway light, making it appear sharper than ever. Lizera lowered her eyes quickly. Good morning, Captain. Morning, Diplomat, he replied with a nod. His voice was steady, calm, not too loud. He gestured down the hallway. Shall we? They walked side by side, though Lizera kept a careful distance, her steps short and careful compared to his longer strides. The station corridors were busy with alien delegates, traders, and workers. The air smelled faintly of metal and recycled oxygen, mixed with dozens of perfumes from different worlds. At first, Lizera stayed silent, her thoughts spinning. But after a while, she found herself sneaking glances at Marcus again. She noticed details she had missed before. The way his eyes moved constantly, scanning for danger. The way his hand rested near his sidearm but never touched it unless needed. The way his expression remained calm even in the noisy chaos of the station. Finally, curiosity broke through her fear. She whispered, Captain, may I ask you something? Marcus turned his head slightly. Of course. She hesitated, her voice almost too soft. Your scar. How did you receive it? Marcus touched his cheek absent-mindedly, as if he had forgotten it was there. His eyes narrowed slightly in thought before he answered. Training accident. Long time ago. Not as dramatic as you might think. Lysera blinked. Not from war? He shook his head. No, I've seen battles, but this mark came from something simple. A mistake during practice. I learned from it. His answer confused her even more. She had imagined the scar as proof of savage violence, of brutal fights and bloodshed. But he spoke of it like it was a lesson, not a trophy of killing, but a memory of growth. Oh, she whispered, not knowing what else to say. Marcus gave her a small smile, brief but real. It doesn't define me, if that's what you're wondering. Lysera lowered her eyes, her cheeks warming slightly. She did not understand why his words affected her so deeply. The council chamber that day was filled with louder debates than before. Two neighboring species argued fiercely over mining rights in a disputed asteroid belt. Voices rose, translators buzzed, fists slammed against tables. Lysera shrank in her seat, overwhelmed. The Aelari were never this loud in their negotiations. They used soft tones, calm words, careful pauses. Here it felt like a storm. She glanced behind her. Marcus stood as always watchful, but his face did not show fear. Instead, there was a strange calmness in his expression, as if he had seen storms like this before and knew how to weather them. When one delegate's harsh voice directed a sudden question toward her, Lysera froze. Dozens of eyes turned to her, waiting. Her throat locked, her palms sweated, her heart pounded. Before she could answer, she heard Marcus's low voice behind her. Breathe, just one word. But it grounded her. She inhaled slowly, then let the air out. She managed a quiet but clear response, enough to satisfy the delegate. As the session continued, she realized something important. Marcus never told her what to say. He never interrupted. He only gave small reminders that helped her hold her place. It was like he was a pillar behind her, steady and silent. Later that evening, Lysera tried to return to her quarters alone, not wanting to trouble Marcus further. But she soon found herself lost in the twisting corridors of the station. The lights flickered in places, and the sound of machinery echoed strangely. Panic rose in her chest. The station was enormous, a maze of steel, and she felt like a fragile fish trapped in a metal ocean. She quickened her steps, but the more she moved, the more lost she became. Fear tightened around her until she almost cried. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, her heart leaping in alarm, only to see Marcus approaching calmly. "Diplomat," he said, his tone firm but not harsh. "You shouldn't walk alone in these sections. Easy to get turned around." Lysera's fear spilled out in her words. I could not find my way back. The corridors, they all looked the same. Marcus studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Understandable, come on. I'll guide you." As they walked back together, Lysera's breathing slowly calmed. She realized she had never truly been in danger, only lost. And yet, when Marcus appeared, it felt like safety itself had arrived. Her curiosity deepened. Why did his presence feel like this? Why did her fear lessen when he walked beside her? That night, Lysera could not sleep. She sat by her window, staring at the stars again. Her thoughts would not rest. The humans are savage, she reminded herself. They fight, they wage wars, they carry scars. But then another voice in her mind whispered, "He carried my tablets without being asked. He steadied me when I stumbled. He told me to breathe when I froze. He guided me when I was lost." She pressed a hand against her chest. Her heart beat faster than normal. She tried to calm herself with logic. It is only his duty. He is a soldier. He must protect me. That is all. But even as she thought this, she remembered the small smile on his face when he had said the scar did not define him. She remembered the warmth in his tone when he told her to rest, and for the first time, she admitted something quietly to herself. I want to know more about him. The following day, she dared to ask questions during their walk. "Captain," she began, her voice still shy but steadier than before, "why did your people come to the stars? Was it for conquest?" Marcus looked at her with mild surprise, then shook his head. "No, not conquest. At least not anymore. We came because our world taught us to reach. We fought each other for centuries, yes, but those same struggles pushed us to grow, to build, to leave our world and see what was beyond." Lysera tilted her head. "So violence helped you reach peace?" Marcus's lips curved slightly. In a way, we learned the hard way what war costs. That's why some of us fight now, to protect peace, not destroy it. His words sank deep into her thoughts. Humans were not savage because they enjoyed chaos. They carried the memory of violence, but also the desire to move beyond it. When they reached the chamber, Lysra felt less afraid than before. She still trembled when debates grew heated, but now she knew she could glance behind her and see the calm figure of Captain Marcus Hale, and that knowledge gave her strength. That evening, when she sat alone again by the stars, Lysra whispered softly, "Savage human, why do you make me curious?" The question lingered in her heart long after the lights dimmed. The third day of the summit began like the others with noise. Voices of delegates echoed through the wide hallways, translators buzzed endlessly, and banners of 100 species floated above the chamber. Lysra walked quietly at Marcus's side, her hands folded in front of her. She was less afraid than before, though the fear was still there. Marcus's calm presence had begun to steady her, but she still carried the old warnings of her people deep in her heart. As they approached the chamber, Marcus leaned closer so only she could hear. "Today may be tense. Stay calm and remember, you don't have to answer every question." Lysra nodded. She trusted his words now more than she wanted to admit. Inside the chamber, the debates quickly grew fierce. Two rival empires accused each other of sabotage in the neutral trade lanes. Delegates slammed fists, some hissed in anger, others shouted so loudly the translators almost failed to keep up. Lysra sat still, her eyes wide. Her people avoided shouting even in private disagreements. To see such open hostility unsettled her. She glanced back at Marcus. He stood tall, arms crossed, scanning the chamber. His face remained calm, though his eyes were sharp and watchful. Suddenly, the chamber lights flickered. The holographic banners above sputtered. A hush fell over the room as everyone looked up. Then the alarm screamed. "Security breach detected." The station's automated voice announced in dozens of languages. "Unauthorized access in council chamber perimeter." Before Lysra could react, the doors burst open. Armed figures stormed inside, mercenaries from a hostile faction that had opposed the summit. Their weapons glowed with energy, and their leader shouted, "The talks end today." Panic erupted. Delegates ducked under tables, guards rushed to draw weapons, and the chamber became chaos. Lysra froze, her body trembling so violently she could not move, but Marcus moved instantly. "Down," he ordered, his voice strong and sharp. He pulled Lysra from her chair and guided her behind the heavy table, as energy blasts lit up the chamber. The air filled with smoke and sparks. Lysra's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. She pressed herself against the floor, eyes wide with terror. Through the chaos, she saw Marcus rise to his full height, weapon in hand. This was the savage side she had been warned about. He moved with deadly precision, his scar catching the flickering light. He shouted commands to other security officers, his voice cutting through the noise. He fired his weapon, each shot clean and controlled, not wild. He pushed back attackers with both strength and strategy, never letting them near the delegates hiding behind cover. Lysra could not look away. Her fear grew sharper, but so did her awe. This was not a wild beast. This was a warrior who fought like a storm, fierce but focused. One mercenary broke through the line and charged straight toward her. Lysra's voice caught in her throat. She could not even scream, but Marcus was already there. He stepped between her and the attacker, blocking the strike with his arm and countering with swift force. The mercenary fell to the floor, weapon clattering away. Marcus's eyes burned with intensity, but his stance never faltered. He turned his head just enough to glance at her. "Stay down. I'll keep you safe." His words, spoken in the middle of fire and danger, carried more weight than any speech in the chamber. The battle raged on. Station guards finally pushed the attackers back, sealing the doors. The alarm faded, leaving smoke and silence behind. Lysra remained crouched on the floor, her body shaking. She looked up slowly at Marcus. His uniform was scorched in places, his cheek marked with a fresh cut, but his stance was unbroken. His eyes still scanned the chamber for danger even after the attackers were gone. Her heart twisted. He looked every bit the savage warrior the stories described, scarred, fierce, unstoppable. But he had fought not to destroy, not for rage. He had fought to protect her. When the chamber finally declared safety, Marcus crouched down beside her. His voice softened, almost gentle again. "You all right?" Lysra tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She managed only a small nod. He gave her a short smile, tired but real. Good. That's what matters. Later, when the chamber was cleared and the delegates escorted back to their quarters, Lysera could not stop thinking about what she had seen. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, the mercenary charging at her. Marcus stepping in front, his voice saying, "I'll keep you safe." She should have been horrified. She had seen violence with her own eyes, the kind of violence her people had always feared. Yet instead of only fear, she felt something else, respect, gratitude, even admiration. When they finally reached her quarters, Marcus stood outside the door as always. His uniform was dirty, his face marked by the cut, but he stood tall. Lysera hesitated, then spoke softly. "Captain." "Thank you." Marcus shrugged slightly as if it were nothing. "Just doing my duty." But Lysera shook her head. "No, it was more than duty. You risked yourself." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded once. "That's what protection means. Someone has to stand between danger and the people who can't fight it." His words stayed with her long after the door closed. That night, Lysera sat by her window again, staring at the stars. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. She thought of how he had looked in battle. Powerful, yes, but controlled. He had not been the savage monster she expected. He had been a shield, not a sword. Her chest felt warm in a way she could not explain. She whispered softly into the silence, "Savage human, why does your strength comfort me?" The next morning, the station buzzed with rumors. Delegates whispered about the attack, about who had sent the mercenaries, about how the summit might collapse. But many also whispered about the human soldier who had stood firm and saved lives. Lysera noticed the way some delegates now looked at Marcus with new respect, while others still eyed him with fear. To her, however, something had changed forever. When she walked beside him to the chamber again, her steps were steadier. She no longer kept such distance, and when their eyes met briefly, she did not look away so quickly. She was still shy, still frightened in some ways, but now, alongside her fear, there was trust. Trust in the savage human who had shown her that strength could protect as well as destroy. The summit resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. Delegates moved cautiously, the memory of yesterday's attack still fresh. Security was tighter, and whispers of who might be behind the mercenary assault floated through the halls. Lysera walked beside Marcus once again, her steps lighter than before. The fear she had carried like a stone in her chest had not disappeared, but it was tempered now by curiosity and growing trust. She had watched him fight, had seen the savage side the legends had warned her about, but also the restraint, the discipline, the care he had shown to protect others. There is more to him than I imagined, she thought, and I want to know what it is. That afternoon, when a long break was called between sessions, Lysera found herself in a quiet corridor near the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass panels. The station's lights reflected faintly on the polished floor, creating a peaceful glow. Marcus followed her silently. He had not asked to be alone, but she sensed he knew she might need space. She hesitated before speaking, her voice soft. "Captain, may I ask you something?" Marcus glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Of course," she swallowed. Why do humans fight so fiercely? You risked yourself yesterday. Was it fear or something else?" Marcus leaned against the railing, arms crossed loosely. He looked out at the stars for a moment before answering. "Fear is part of it, yes. But it's not the only reason. We fight because we care, because someone has to stand when others cannot. Because if we don't, things we value, people, homes, worlds, are lost. That's why I protect you." Lysera's eyes widened slightly. She had expected answers about strategy, duty, or orders, not emotion. Not care, but "You could have left," she whispered. "You are stronger. You could have saved yourself." Marcus turned to her, his gaze steady. "And leave someone else to be hurt? That is not who I am. Strength means nothing if you do not use it to help those who need it." Her chest warmed. His words were simple, but they carried a weight she had never felt before. Humans were savage, yes, but they were also capable of devotion and kindness, even in the middle of chaos. Over the next hours, as they walked the halls together, Lysera noticed small details that made her heart flutter. Marcus offered her water when she looked thirsty, adjusted her chair to make her comfortable, and even carried heavy communication devices without her asking. Each gesture was small, Ordinary, yet each one made her feel safer, seen and strangely drawn to him. During a brief lunch break, they sat on a quiet balcony overlooking the docking bay. The stars above and the lights below created a shimmering cityscape. Lysra carefully held a small plate of food. Her species ate lightly, almost meditatively. Marcus sat beside her, eating quickly but politely. He noticed her hesitation. "You don't have to eat fast. Take your time," Lysra blinked. I am not used to this pace," he smiled faintly. "Neither am I used to all this fancy diplomacy. But we learn, right?" She laughed softly, a sound rare for her in public. "Yes, we learn." It was moments like this, quiet and ordinary, that made her curiosity grow stronger. She wanted to know what he thought when he wasn't fighting or standing guard, what made him laugh, what made him pause, what made him human. As they returned to the summit chamber, Lysra noticed another small detail. Marcus did not just fight. He watched. He listened. He observed everyone in the room, delegates, security officers, even her. His attention was sharp, but it was never cruel. He assessed danger, yes, but he also seemed to understand people, their moods, their fears. She could not help thinking, this is not just strength. This is understanding. He sees me even when I try to hide. Later that evening, a sudden message arrived from the summit organizers. Another species had requested private talks, hoping to influence votes for their proposal. Lysra was expected to attend. She felt nervous. Marcus noticed her hesitation. "You don't have to go alone," he said quietly. "I will accompany you," Lysra blinked. She had imagined standing in front of hostile negotiators alone. But now, with Marcus beside her, she felt a strange courage. She nodded. "Yes, I would like that." The private meeting room was smaller than the main chamber, but the tension inside was sharper. 2 delegates tried to intimidate her, questioning her knowledge of interstellar law and her species' positions. Lysra's palms sweated. Her heart raced. Marcus stayed just behind her, hands visible but not threatening. His presence was like a shield she could feel even without touching. She drew a slow breath, remembering his words from the day before. "Take a breath. Speak when you're ready." When the first delegate raised a pointed question, Lysra answered calmly, citing treaties and facts she had studied. Her voice trembled slightly at first, but Marcus's steady gaze behind her strengthened her resolve. She noticed his small nod as she finished each answer, a silent reassurance that she was doing well. By the end of the meeting, the delegates who had tried to intimidate her left with respect. Lysra's hand still shook, but her chest swelled with pride. Marcus smiled faintly. "See, you did perfectly." Lysra could not help but glance at him. I could not have done it without you." He shook his head. "You could have. I only reminded you to trust yourself." Her mind whispered a silent truth. "He believes in me, even when I do not believe in myself." That night, after the day's sessions ended, Lysra and Marcus walked on the observation deck. The stars were bright, casting long reflections on the glass floor. The universe stretched endlessly before them, vast and silent. Lysra hesitated before speaking. "Captain, do humans always care like you do?" Marcus looked at her thoughtful. "Some do, some don't. But many of us learn that it matters more to help than to fight. Strength is nothing without purpose. We fight because we choose to protect, not because we must dominate." Lysra listened carefully. She had never imagined the stories she had heard about humans were so incomplete. Humans were not only savage, they could be devoted, thoughtful, and even gentle. Her heart beat faster. She realized she was no longer just curious. She felt drawn to him, but not in a way her people usually understood. Her feelings were new, confusing, and exciting. She swallowed. I am glad you are here, not just as a protector, but as a companion." Marcus tilted his head slightly, a small smile touching his lips. "I'm glad to be here too, Lysra. We make a good team." Her cheeks warmed. "Yes, I suppose we do." Over the next days, as the summit continued, Lysra found herself observing Marcus more often than the other delegates. She noticed the small gestures, the way he adjusted his sleeves before speaking, the way he kept a calm tone even when the chamber erupted in shouting, the way he remembered little things about her preferences. Each observation made her feel closer to him. Her shyness remained, but it softened. She wanted to ask him questions about his home world, his family, his past, but she did not know if it was appropriate. Yet the thought of sharing moments with him, even quietly, filled her with warmth. One evening, as they walked back from a diplomatic dinner, a quiet moment appeared. The corridor was empty, the lights dimmed. Lysera stopped, her gaze falling on Marcus. "Captain, yesterday, today, I have seen so many things about humans I did not expect. You are more than I imagined, more than the stories." Marcus looked at her, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thank you, Lysera. I try to be honest in what I do. That is all I can be." Her chest fluttered. "It is enough. More than enough." They stood silently for a moment, sharing the calm between them. Lysera realized she was no longer only afraid of him. She felt something deeper, admiration, trust, and a warmth she had never known before. As she returned to her quarters that night, Lysera whispered to herself, staring at the stars again. "Savage human. You are frightening, yes. Strong, yes. But you are kind, gentle, brave, and I cannot help but be drawn to you." The realization left her both nervous and excited. She did not fully understand it, but she knew one thing clearly. Her feelings for Marcus had grown, and she wanted to know him more, not just as a protector, but as someone she could trust, admire, and perhaps even care for. The 5th day of the summit dawned quiet, almost peaceful, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the previous attack. Delegates moved more carefully, whispering among themselves, still shaken, but determined to continue the talks. Lysera felt a mix of nervousness and resolve. She had faced her fears, watched Marcus fight, and discovered a new understanding of humanity. Today she would speak, not just for her species, but for the possibility of trust between worlds. Marcus walked beside her as he had done every day since her arrival. His presence, once terrifying, was now a comforting anchor. She had come to rely on his calm, his steady gaze, and even his small, quiet gestures. Her heart beat faster whenever she glanced at him, though she still maintained her formal posture in public. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice low so only she could hear. Lysera nodded. I think I am. With you here, I feel stronger." Marcus gave a small, approving nod. "Good, that's all that matters. Just speak your truth." Inside the council chamber, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Delegates from the rival factions exchanged sharp glances, but security was vigilant, and the memory of the mercenary attack hung in the air. Lysera took her assigned seat, adjusting her robes and straightening her posture. Marcus remained behind her chair, scanning the room with alert gray eyes. Even as the chamber settled into a nervous quiet, his presence reminded her that she was not alone. She drew a slow breath, recalling his words from previous days. "Take a breath. Speak when you're ready. Trust yourself." When the presiding officer looked at her and gestured to speak, Lysera rose carefully. She felt the weight of every eye in the room. But unlike before, her fear did not paralyze her. She felt something stronger, trust in her own knowledge, trust in the presence of the human soldier who had protected her, and a growing courage born from understanding him. "My fellow delegates," she began, her voice steady though soft. "I speak not only for the Alari, but for all who seek peace and understanding in the galaxy. Yesterday's events reminded us of the dangers that come from mistrust and division. But they also remind us that courage, loyalty, and cooperation can overcome fear." She paused, glancing briefly at Marcus. His eyes met hers for just a moment, offering reassurance without a word. She continued, "We are all from different worlds with different histories and different cultures. Some of us have fought wars. Some have lived in calm seas, and some, like the humans present, have learned the cost of conflict and the value of protection. We cannot judge one another solely by past stories or old rumors. We must act in trust and in unity." The room was silent, the delegates listening closely. Lysera felt a wave of pride and relief. Her words, once trembling, now carried conviction. She took another breath. "I have learned something during this summit. That strength is not only in power, but in the choice to protect, to care, and to act with purpose. Humans, once called savage by many, have shown courage and loyalty beyond fear. They are capable of compassion, even amidst danger. I stand here today not only to speak for peace, but to recognize them as allies, as friends, and as a species worthy of our trust." The chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Then murmurs began to spread. Some delegates exchanged looks, nodding slowly. Others whispered in shock, reconsidering old prejudices. Lysira's words carried not only her voice, but the example she had witnessed in Marcus: restraint, bravery, and care. When the presiding officer called for a vote on the proposed treaties, the room's tension eased slightly. Delegates spoke with caution, but respect, and the final decisions reflected a rare unity among the factions. Agreements were reached that promoted trade, shared resources, and security cooperation. The summit, which had begun with fear and chaos, ended with hope. Lysira's role had been small in some ways, yet monumental in others. She had stood firm in front of the galaxy's leaders, facing fear and uncertainty, and spoken with honesty. And Marcus had been there every step, silent yet guiding, a constant reminder that strength could be gentle. After the chamber emptied, Lysira and Marcus walked toward the observation deck. She had not noticed how tense she had been until the calm of the stars greeted her. She inhaled deeply, letting the cool space air fill her lungs. Marcus glanced at her. "You did well, all of it. I am proud of you." Lysira's cheeks warmed. I could not have done it without you. Not just your protection, but your presence. Knowing you were there made me brave." Marcus's lips curved into a small smile. "I only reminded you of what was already inside you." Her heart fluttered. There is something more than duty in him, she thought. There is choice, care, and warmth. They walked in silence for a moment, watching the stars drift beyond the glass panels. Lysira finally gathered her courage. "Captain, I must admit something. At first I feared you. The stories of humans, of their strength and savagery, made me wary, but now I see you differently. You are strong, yes, but also careful, kind, and brave. I respect you and I trust you." Marcus turned to her, a soft expression on his face. "Lysira, thank you. That means more than you know. I do not expect anything from you, but hearing that, knowing you trust me, makes my duty lighter. And my heart, it feels lighter too." Lysira's cheeks heated at his words. She had never imagined such honesty from a human. She had always feared humans as savage and unpredictable, yet here stood one who inspired trust, admiration, and something she could not yet name. Days passed as the summit concluded. Delegates began to depart, leaving the station quieter than before. Lysira spent more time with Marcus, walking the observation decks, discussing the stars, the station, and the future of interstellar diplomacy. She learned small details about his life, the home world he grew up on, the friends he had lost and the ones he still remembered, the reason he became a soldier. She listened, fascinated. Each story revealed not only his strength but his humanity. His choices, his care for others, and the patience he carried in the face of chaos inspired her, and each moment made her feelings grow stronger. She did not yet fully understand them, but she knew she was drawn to him, not as a diplomat to a soldier, but as one being to another. On the final evening, as the last delegates departed, Lysira and Marcus stood on the observation deck together. The station's lights glimmered softly below and the stars stretched in an endless sea above. I will return to my world soon," Lysira said quietly, her voice barely above the hum of the station. "But before I leave, I want to thank you, Captain, not only for protecting me, but for showing me a side of humanity I never expected. You are remarkable." Marcus turned to her, his gray eyes soft but steady. "Lysira, it was my honor, and I hope we can continue to learn from each other even across worlds." Her heart fluttered at the words. "I would like that. Very much." A quiet smile passed between them. It was not spoken aloud, but it carried more meaning than any words. They had faced fear, chaos, and doubt together. They had witnessed strength, loyalty, and courage in action. And now, in the calm after the summit, a new bond had formed, one of trust, respect, and something deeper. Lysira realized she no longer feared the human beside her. She admired him, trusted him, and, though she had not said it aloud, her heart leaned toward him in a way she had never expected. As they watched the stars, Lysira thought of her people's old warnings. Beware the humans. They are savage now, she understood. Humans were strong, yes. They were capable of violence, yes. But they were also capable of loyalty, kindness, and courage guided by heart as well as strength. And one human, Captain Marcus Hale, had shown her all of that. She whispered softly to herself, smiling for the first time that evening. "Savage human. I no longer fear you. I respect you. I trust you, and I cannot resist the warmth you bring. Marcus glanced at her, reading the subtle shift in her expression. He reached out a hand and she took it lightly. It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes. A bridge between species, a bond beyond diplomacy, and perhaps the first step towards something more. The stars stretched endlessly above them. The summit had ended. Conflicts had been resolved, trust had been rebuilt, and an unlikely connection had begun to flourish between a shy alien diplomat and the savage human who had shown her the strength of kindness. And in that moment, Lysera knew that the galaxy, wide and vast as it was, could hold not only danger but hope, and even the possibility of understanding, friendship, and something that might one day become more.